All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome into the Rise and Grind Morning Show. That's right. We got a little bit of a different look this morning. We're testing out some new assets, try to level up the show again this season. And we're trying to get ready for the big season, which starts next week, Monday, with the opening of tampering period. But today is the biggest shoe to drop, and that's franchise tag. So we're going to be talking about franchise tag. Who's going to be getting tagged? What is this going to affect the Lions at all? Is it going to affect the NFC North? I know Eric and Riley both have some information for us on those two topics. We're also going to give you guys all the information as far as contracts, salary cap basics, salary cap explained, franchise and transition tags. Justin Rogers put out a really good article, and we're going to highlight it today and kind of give you guys the goodies, as well as dead money, notable quotes of the day, and all the different data points that we're going to compile today and share with you guys. It's going to be helpful when we go into the next couple of weeks of all of this mumbo jumbo talk that nobody understands half the time, but it's super important. So let's get the guys in here and welcome everybody into the show. See, I already got the wrong one going. Look at that. All right, we'll start with this one. There we go. Good morning, guys.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Riley, it's been a minute. How you been?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. This is the place to be to start your morning. So I'm excited to be back. And I know I've mentioned here before, the company I work for is based out of Detroit, ironically enough. And so we have some people from corporate in town. And I was talking with one of them yesterday. He saw a Lions helmet at my work desk. He's like, "Oh, you're a Lions fan?" I said, "Yeah, man." So we started talking, sent him the link. And so shout out to my guy Mitchell. I think he's going to be tuning in this morning. He subscribed right away. So I said, "Congrats, man! You just found the best Detroit Lions show on the web."
Certainly appreciate that, and Mitchell and all the general RV family out there, man. Appreciate you guys, and obviously, thank you for subscribing. I didn't know that General RV was a Detroit-grown business. I had no idea.
Yeah, started as a gas station in Detroit, and now we've got 20 locations nationwide. And it's just funny that the more people I meet from corporate, I've been there since 2019, but the more people I meet, they're surprised to find a Utah that's a Detroit Lions fan. And then I say, and not only am I a Lions fan, but I happen to be part of the Rockhound Detroit Lions show. So
Yeah,
it's always cool to kind of get to share that tidbit.
All right, so now that we've got new people in this morning, let me just do a quick audio check. Okay, so for me, it sounds good. You can hear the delay there. But Motown Mitch says it's a little bit low. I'll turn it up a little bit. If you guys hear any clipping or any distortion, just let us know. I think that we are almost on the other side of this, making sure that all of our volumes and everything are matched up. So, Eric, what's happening this morning for you, man? What are you excited about for the next 7 days? I mean, this is when it all begins, right? I mean, this is when your team starts to change.
Crazy cuts, crazy tags, crazy non-tags. It's all coming real quick. Woke up this morning and everything is covered in ice, a thick layer of ice today because it rained last night and then it froze. Well, it's supposed to rain again today. It's going to be a sloppy, wet mess out there. But spring is coming. Spring has sprung up here in the UP. The rain and the warmer temperatures, I think, are here to stay. At least 30 or above for a while.
It'd be nice. Last year when I was at the combine, it was fairly nice outside. But when I was there last week, it was like 45, 50 mile an hour winds blowing me sideways. I could barely walk across the street to Lucas Oil. And yeah, it was bad. I'm excited. I'm excited about spring, but I'm more excited to get into the summer months.
Yeah, every morning I got a warning on my phone that all the outdoor activities were moved indoors because of the wind at Lucas Oil. Yeah,
remember last year the whole outdoor arena there where they have all the different things that you could visit, and that had to be a cold adventure walking through that, but I walked right by it. So let's give a shout out to our chat members this morning. We've got Mike P. We got Trace leading us off this morning. Marine's in the house. Stayla Eves. Again, I can't thank Marine enough for meeting us down at the Combine last week. It was good to meet you. Who else is in here today? We have, oh, goodness, Kevin Barr. Morning, Kevin. John DeSage, Jack 2125. Who else is in here today? Motown Mitch, of course. Motown, hopefully the sound's a little bit better for you. J-Rod in the house. Brandy Coffee. Jay cruising, always cruising. All right, who else is in the chat? By the way, if you guys haven't subscribed, do us a huge favor. I hate to beg. I'm told every day that I'm supposed to ask, but I never ask, and that's probably the reason why we don't get extra subscribers in the slowest parts of the season. But we'd love to have you guys in. I still have like 12 mini helmets to give away before I get a whole new collection this year. So I'm not sure if it's going to be the exact same style of mini helmet. I'm working on something with Pro Sports Zone in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be putting something bigger, better, brighter together for this season. Derek Lewis is in the house, of course. We've got Riley O'Brien joining us this morning and live. Jay-Z's in the house. So let's get it done today. Let's kick it off with some NFL news, as we always do. It is 8:18 a.m. It's a Rise and Grind morning show. And we're going to talk about the basics of NFL free agency, the salary cap, contract structures, all of this boring stuff that you guys probably don't pay attention to. But for us on this side, it is things that I have to pay attention to if I'm trying to get a few things right when it comes to the draft. If Eric and Riley and you know, if we're all going to get things right in our mock drafts or whatever we're working on, these things matter. Like, these are the most important key points of this part of the season, understanding where your team is, how much cap they have, how much cap they don't have. Are they going to use a transition tag or a franchise tag? How does that, you know, affect the team's future? And as the NFL really prepares for the start of the new league year, which is just a week away, like I think it's a week away tomorrow. Analysts, fans, I mean, everybody that takes a hardcore look into this stuff, it's confusing. And so all the negotiations, all the financial jargon, I mean, everything that you dig into, it can really get you down a rabbit hole in a hurry. But there's some intricacies of NFL free agency, the salary cap, the structures, the player contracts that we'll never understand everything. Even Spotrac and Over the Cap, they give you a highlighted glimpse of what's in a, you know, multi-page contract, but we don't know everything. So let's give you some basics. And that's where I'm going to start. So salary cap basics. Now, the NFL obviously operates under what is considered a hard salary cap. And the term hard is important because there's a debt ceiling, right? You can only go to this ceiling. Now, teams go beyond the ceiling all the time. It's collectively bargained with the CBA, the NFLPA, and there's a percentage of league revenue which is attributed to the salary cap every year. Now, we've seen some pretty big numbers over the last 2 seasons, but more importantly, over the last decade. Now, teams are limited on how much they can spend on player salaries. Now, the cap for this season, 2025, is set at $279.2 million, which is marking another significant increase of 9.3% year over year. Now, last season, it was right in that same neighborhood, right around 10%, a huge increase. Over the last decade, though, the cap has increased 50% or more. Now, we have free agents that we're going to talk about, especially between now and next week. There are 3 categories of free agents. There's unrestricted, restricted, and exclusive rights. Now, these are determined by the number of accrued seasons that a player has in each league year. So each category has distinct rules regarding contract negotiations and team rights and what they can and can't do with said player, or what said player can and can't do in contract negotiations moving forward. And then we have contract structure. So the NFL contracts consist of various components, including a base salary, a signing bonus, performance incentives or escalators, as we like to call them. And then understanding how these elements will not only affect the player, but the salary cap, the team, future moves, and obviously the 90-man roster heading into camp, I feel is the most important, because you have to play this game of the top 51, which, sidebar, I'm hoping at some point they will increase the number of players that are allowed to be, you know, on these teams. You're increasing the cap by a large amount. Why not add a couple extra players? Like, top 51 never made sense to me. Like, top 50 makes more sense, or top 55, or top 52, but an odd number just seemed kind of weird. So why don't we get, you know, more players so that teams have, you know, more to fall back on? And, you know, case point, your Detroit Lions at 24 suffered a rash of injuries. I mean, more injuries than we've ever seen. A couple extra players could have been the difference between beating the Commanders and where the season ended. So dead money and restructuring, that's a big part of what happens over the next couple of weeks. You're going to have phase 1 of free agency, which is going to come hot and fast, and then it's going to fall off by about day 3. And then the next week you get into phase 2, which is going to be your second middle tier guys. They're going to start to go. But when players are cut or traded, the remaining guaranteed money on their contracts create what is called dead money, which still counts against the cap. Now, teams often restructure these contracts. They create immediate cap space, but this can also push financial obligations into the future, which is where teams tend to get in trouble. Let's hit it off with you, Eric. Salary cap explained, if you wouldn't mind taking the next couple of segments here.
Sure. So the salary cap is a critical component of NFL operations, ensuring a level playing field among teams by limiting spending on player salaries. Unlike leagues with a soft cap, the NFL's hard cap prohibits teams from exceeding the designated limit. The cap for 2025 at $279.2 million reflects a $23.8 million increase from the previous year. And over the past decade, the cap has nearly doubled, climbing 94.9%. Today, the tag structure is vital to saving cap space and retaining players without total investment. Let's review each tag option. So the first one, franchise and transition tags. Teams can utilize the franchise tag to retain key unrestricted free agents, offering a 1-year contract based on the average salaries of the top players in that position. The transition tag provides a lower cost alternative, but without draft pick compensation.
So these are key figures that you're also going to go over today. I know you have a couple of segments where we're going to be talking about the current tracker, the current tracker on transition and franchise tags, and then how this is going to implicate, even the NFC North, right? What's going to be happening with Sam Darnold and other players. Next, we have free agent categories. So Riley, if you wouldn't mind hitting the unrestricted, restricted, and exclusive rights, and then I'll kick it back over to you, Eric, for the base salaries, signing bonuses, and performance bonuses in the next segment.
Yeah, perfect. The unrestricted free agents, players with 4 or more accrued seasons whose contracts have expired. Those players can sign with any team, allowing for maximum market flexibility. Your restricted free agents are those with 3 accrued seasons that can be tendered by their original teams at various compensation levels, giving teams the opportunity to match outside offers. The right of first refusal. Tender is set at $2.985 million for 2025, escalating to $6.822 million for a first-round tender. And then your exclusive right free agents are players with fewer than 3 accrued seasons. Those players can only negotiate with their current teams, which can tender them at the veteran minimum, ranging anywhere from $915,000 to $985,000 in 2025.
So this one's interesting. We Eric and I spoke about all of the different Lions free agents yesterday. We ran through the whole list. I think there's like 31 or 32 free agents, and we have a rash of RFAs, ERFAs. And so when you look at, for instance, restricted free agent Shane Zielstra, if the Lions wanted to use a restricted free agent, I guess, do you really call it a right of first refusal tender? Well, then you're guaranteeing that you're going to pay him $2.985 million. And for any team that would like to have his services is going to have to beat that. Mm-hmm. Right. And then you're not even going to get anything back because it's just right of first refusal. There's no consideration as far as draft picks considered. You'd have to bump that up to a first round tender. And I think there's also a second round tender in there. As far as restricted free agents, and then you have the ERFAs, exclusive rights free agents. Now they have fewer than 3 accrued seasons, and what it constitutes an accrued season, I believe it's more than 10 games. I'm probably wrong on that. I probably should have looked that up. But if I remember, players like Hendon Hooker, when he came in, he was on the NFI list, but if he was not activated for at least the last 6 games. then the Lions could have told his contract, which would have added an extra year of control at the end of his deal. And the Lions didn't want to do that. So they stood by their word, and then they activated him for the last 6 weeks of that season, which means he earned one accrued season, which accrued seasons matter because it helps these guys for the retirement benefits, all of their medical insurance, everything that they're going to have post football life. So getting at least 4 accrued seasons, I think, is the base threshold that you need to be well taken care of. I'm sure they have really good retirement plans well into the 6 figures, but you have to get there first. And so the Lions did right by their players, is I guess what I'm saying. They also did it, obviously Mahogany played last year, but, other players that started off on the NFI list were also activated. JMO was another one when he started. So next up we have, go ahead.
You were right, Will. Sorry. I think you said 10 games. Quick search on this. An accrued season is when a player plays in at least 6 regular season games. So
plays in 6, or is it plays in 6 and activated for 10, or is it plays and activated for 10?
From what I see, it just says a player that plays in at least 6 regular season games on a team's
active roster.
Yep.
Gotcha. All right, contract components, Eric. So this is the fun part of what we're going to be diving into pretty deep over the next week or so. The structure of NFL contracts are really multifaceted. So if you'd walk through base salary fundamentals, the signing bonuses, and the performance bonuses.
Okay, so base salaries. The fundamental salary a player receives, which is a minimum threshold, but no ceiling. For instance, Dallas quarterback Dak Prescott holds the record for the highest base salary at $47.75 million. That is crazy money. All right. And then signing bonuses. These are guaranteed amounts paid upon signing, prorated over the length of the contract for cap purposes. For example, a $12 million signing bonus on a 3-year deal would count as $4 million against the cap for each of the 3 years. And then a performance bonus. These can be tied to specific achievements such as playing time or statistical milestones. They are classified as likely or unlikely to be earned, affecting how they impact the salary cap.
So when we look at contracts, we're seeing something that is been consistently used by Brad Holmes, which we didn't use a lot before. I feel like personally, I don't remember seeing a lot of void years. And that's probably another topic within the contract component section here that we should probably talk about for just a second is void years. Now, void years, you can add a max of 5 minus the number of remaining contract years. If I understand that, let's say you have 1 year left on your deal, you can add 4 void years to kind of kick the bonuses and things down the line. When that player is traded or cut, released, whatever, all of those void years are now due. So if you park $2 million in every void year, you're going to have an $8 million cap hit just from all of those void years coming due. If I understand it correctly, obviously, as time goes on, we get more fluid with this and understand it a little bit better because there's so many components to this. And I've tried to get like Sam Monson on and others. I'm going to reach out to the Spotrac guy again and see if I can't get him to come in and help us explain some of this stuff, because understanding contracts, I think, is the hardest part for a fan, or an analyst in trying to understand what's exactly going to happen with this player. How can that fit within the structure of what your team has for cap availability? So when we talk about players like Myles Garrett and huge numbers that he's expected to get, I think understanding the contract and the way it works is probably the one thing that people don't get. And that's why they think that attaining a player like that is so easy. And it's not. It is the hardest thing for any NFL GM to do. 1, from an availability standpoint, but 2, from a contract standpoint. Those contracts are cap killers. That's what I call them. They're cap killers. And it can really set your team back if it doesn't work out. So franchise and transition tags. Let me run through this one for just a quick second. So to retain key players, every season, teams may use the franchise tag, which guarantees a 1-year contract based on the average of the top 5 salaries at that player's position. Now, for 2025, the franchise tag for a quarterback is set at $40.24 million. And Eric's going to let us know here in a little bit why that's important to Sam Darnold. Now, the transition tag, which is a little bit lower, $17.6 million. The transition tag usually allows teams to match offers from other teams without receiving any compensation if they choose not to match. Those are big words just to say, look, if we franchise you, you're probably sticking around. Or you hear the tag and trade sometimes, or you get the transition tag, which just locks the player up a little bit so that you can continue on with negotiations to make sure that both sides have equitable relief in a contract that makes sense. And so all these things matter, right? There's a ton of verbiage here that in jargon, like we said earlier, that it's going to be flying all week long, all next week. And if you don't pay attention, you get lost. Now, dead money is a big one. Dead money in restructuring contracts. Obviously, dead money refers to the remaining guaranteed amounts on a contract for a player who is no longer going to be on the roster. Why is that significant? Well, if you remember, going from 2020 to 2021, and again, if memory serves me correct, I think the Lions had close to $40 million in dead money going into 2021. And they had even less money in available cap. So when fans are saying Brad doesn't do enough, or Brad couldn't, or Brad didn't bring in these players, or you got to remember, we didn't have anything. Like we had draft picks, right? For the next couple of seasons, we had a few number ones, but we didn't have any money. And so being able to sign at the top of the draft, that's another thing that is important that'll come up in several weeks, is when you're picking in the top 10, it costs you about $24 million to sign all those rookies based on today's cap. When you're picking at the back end of the first round, it costs maybe 10 to 12 to 14 million to sign all of your draft picks if you have, 6 or 7 picks. So there's a big difference with how much money you need just to be able to sign your rookies. And having a lot of dead money obviously isn't going to help. And you're not going to be able to do the things in free agency if you're starting every year from behind the 8 ball. The Browns, I think, are a good case point. I think they started at minus 27 million this season. Obviously, the offset now to the new league year washed it out. So they might start with a couple $1 million positive before a lot of cuts this week or trades or whatever they're going to be doing between now and next week. Now, to create cap space, teams often restructure contracts. They convert base salaries into bonuses. Why? Well, bonuses you can spread out over the remaining years of the contract up to 5 years. If you remember the void year, if you have 3 years, on an extension, you can add a couple of void years on top of that. You're spreading out those bonuses over all 5 years. So it lessens the blow until you move that player. When you move that player, well, it all becomes due. So additional contract considerations, teams may also utilize, like we're talking about, the void years to extend amortization, which is just a big word to say kick the can. That's really all I wanted to go over. Obviously, the cap today is set at 279.2. Again, it represents a 9.3 increase from the previous year. The cap has nearly doubled over the past decade. My figure was wrong earlier. It's 94.9% in the last 10 years the cap has risen. Now, the franchise tag for the quarterback is set at 40.24. And I think that's where we're going to next is, Eric, what is Happy Franchise Tag Transition Day all about?
Yeah, so happy tag day, everybody, or Fat Tuesday, as some people call it. Today is Tuesday, March 4th. And today, Tuesday, March 4th at 4 p.m., it is when franchise tags are due. Okay, so we have a few players that have been tagged already, and they've gotten the franchise tag, and we'll go over the ones who have been tagged already. So first off, they had Trey Smith from the Kansas City Chiefs. He got a franchise tag cost of $23.4 million. So without a ton of salary cap flexibility, Smith looked like a player who would be playing home games in a different NFL city next year. The Chiefs found a way to make it happen anyway. After watching their offensive line cave in throughout the Super Bowl, Kansas City couldn't afford to create another hole up front. So Smith was set to arguably be the best free agent. Now he'll return to Kansas City as the Chiefs hope to solve a salary cap headache. So right now, currently, there are 5 teams who are above the salary cap. And so by next Tuesday at 4 o'clock, they have to be under the cap. And I'm pretty sure the Chiefs were one of those 5 teams, if I remember correctly.
I'll pull it up.
And so next up, our next tag person is T. Higgins from Cincinnati. He was tagged yesterday or the day before yesterday. He is going to count $26,179,200 against the cap for this year. The Bengals are opting to tag Higgins with the hopes of finding a long-term agreement, according to the team statement. It always seemed like the likeliest outcome for the two sides, especially since the Bengals couldn't afford to lose the receiver to free agency. With Joe Burrow's clear message that he wants the team to keep key players such as Jamar Chase, Trey Hendrickson, and Higgins in the building, putting the tag on him shouldn't come as a surprise. Joe Burrow has even come forward and said, hey, let's rework my deal to make it so we can keep these guys. I don't think he said that he's going to offer less money, but he has said he was willing to rework his deal. And then let's see. And those are the only 2 that have been tagged so far that I've found. And the rest of them are tag candidates. So Osa O from the Dallas Cowboys. He is, let's see, perhaps a surprise entrant into the list. Mr. O became a franchise tag candidate late in the process. The Cowboys are reportedly set to tag the defensive tackle if they can't come to a long-term deal. The 26-year-old would come with a hefty $25.1 million price tag, which could limit the Cowboys in other areas this offseason. Dallas isn't flush with cap space and has plenty of holes to fill in order to get back into contending. And that might be Jerry's going all in this year, is tagging a player. Since he made that big statement last year that he was going all in and never did.
Yeah, Jerry, gotta love Jerry. So back to your statement on the teams that were under the cap or over the cap, really. So you have the Falcons. They're about 5.3 over. The Seahawks are about 7.2. The Bills 10.7. The Chiefs 17.9. The Browns 23.1. The Saints 47.6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 6. But what I look at is effective cap space. And the effective cap space, it tells a little bit more of the story of what you actually have available. And right now you have the Cowboys, the Dolphins added to that list as far as teams that are north of the cap number. The Dolphins are $7 million in the hole, and the Cowboys almost $1 million in the hole. The Saints, biggest number out of everybody, $52.9 million upside down.
Wow.
Pretty crazy.
That's going to be hard to fix.
They'll fix it. I mean, unfortunately, this is the time of year when, teams, they're going to make a lot of big moves and players, for instance, like Zack Martin, which we'll talk about next, Riley, that just retired. So obviously that's not going to hurt the Cowboys. I don't know if it helps them, but it's not going to hurt them. Go ahead, Riley. You're up with the news on Cowboys there.
Zack Martin news. No, yeah, you threw me an alley-oop there. I just was on mute for half a second here, but so yeah, it was announced, and I think the formal announcement's coming today from Zack Martin that he's hanging him up. But I thought there were some interesting comments from Dak Prescott. When it was announced yesterday, he said, Zach's the best. It's hard to even fathom a locker room or a huddle without Zack Martin. He's been here since I've been here, and he's been a warrior. You talk about a guy who doesn't miss time, and if he does, it's bad. He is the ultimate leader. He leads by example. He doesn't have to say much, and when he does, you're all ears. It's a guy who you cannot replace. You just can't replace him with one guy. It's going to take myself and a bunch of other guys, and I'm not even talking about just on the field. I'm talking about the leadership he brings off of the field. And so we see it every year. I know last year, like Aaron Darnold was one of the guys that retired. Zack Martin's only 34. And so he's got a lot of games under his belt. He's played a lot of football, a ton of snaps, but it's always kind of one of these things where when a guy of this caliber retires, immediately the speculation is, well, if Dallas is in contention, if they're in the mix late in the season, is he going to consider maybe coming back? So, that's something that of course came to my mind right away. And I wanted to get your thoughts, Will, just on your thoughts overall on Martin as the player, and then do you think that he's done, or maybe he will play again? What are your thoughts?
I don't really have a ton of thoughts on Mr. Martin here. I mean, obviously he's been one of the best to do it, for a long time. And I'm going to pull something up real quick. I can't remember how many years he's put in.
I think he was drafted in either 2014, I want to say.
Yeah, I know it's more than 10 years, I thought, but I mean, I don't know if he's going to play again. I mean, what is he, 34, 35 years old now?
He's 34. So he's just a young pup.
Yeah. Young by, what we do young, but not young in the NFL's mind anymore. But yeah, 34, he's scheduled to become a free agent. And instead of becoming a free agent, I guess he's decided to retire. Now, what does that really mean? Could the Cowboys be playing coy here and maybe they have a deal with him? Because, as a free agent, you don't have to sign with anybody. You can do whatever you want. You don't have any control over you. He ended last season with an ankle injury. He missed 7 games, sitting out 2 games in 2023, but he missed 7 games last year. I mean, he's done it at a very, very high level for a very long time. At 34 years old, I think maybe he's probably just decided to call it quits and just that's it. Maybe, just maybe, if the Cowboys actually do something this year and they need a player, then yeah, I could see where maybe he could come back. But other than that, I would assume that when an offensive lineman hangs it up, they kind of hang it up. Like, I don't hear too many ever really coming back to play.
You think of like a Joe Thomas for the Browns, right? A guy that just like, you never hear anything negative. They just show up. They're super professional from day one. And happen to play for, one team his whole career. And then, yeah, I would agree. I think he kind of, when he makes that decision, he's making it not out of emotion, but it's well thought out.
Yeah, absolutely. So Eric, we've got free agency news popping next week, but we also have transition tag and tag day information here. What's going on with Sam Darnold? And then did you walk through everybody that was in that article as far as who's been tagged already? Did I miss all that?
Yeah, I walked through the tag people. There's only 2, T. Higgins and Smith from the Chiefs, but there's some possibilities. And one was Oso from Dallas, and another one is the quarterback himself, Mr. Sam Darnold. And reports have come out last night and this morning from everywhere that it does not appear that the Minnesota Vikings are going to tag Mr. Sam Darnold. They're going to let him walk in free agency.
See, now I heard something different. Now, I know that there's always mixed reviews right now, right? There's always mixed reports where on one side they're saying that he's going to test free agency, but within that, the construct of either tagging Sam Darnold or working out a deal, the tag may be off the table, but working out a deal is what I'm hearing is going to happen or is in the works, or at least they've had the conversations of what it's going to look like to keep him in Minnesota for at least the next season. So letting him test, maybe that's not a bad thing, and seeing what his actual value comes back. I mean, look, the Vikings, they stole Sam Darnold's performance last year. $10 million for what he produced, 14-3 season, bringing him to the playoffs. I mean, look, you couldn't have asked for a better performance out of a quarterback last year. Yeah, it didn't end right, but it didn't for us either. But for $10 million, you get that kind of production out of a quarterback, man, you struck gold twice in a season. But bringing him back this year, there's been numbers that have been, thrown out there that Sam's looking for north of $45 million per season. And he wants a lot of it guaranteed if it's going to be a single year, like a franchise tag, which would make more sense. So if it's going to go north of 45, why wouldn't you just tag him? It just it doesn't make any sense. What was the tag? 40.24?
Yeah, it's 40 million.
Yeah. I mean, and that's fully guaranteed. So if it's going to go north of 45, I guess where it would make sense is if you were to get him on a 2-year deal at 100 million, but only 35 million of it's guaranteed. Well, then that obviously would help the Vikings because they're not paying 40 million guaranteed in just one season maybe they're spreading 40 million guaranteed over 2 seasons. I don't think Darnold's going to fly for that. But I also don't know if he really has much of a negotiating chip. Yep, he had a great season. How many other teams are built with the weapons that the Minnesota Vikings had last year and the defense that they had last season that would give him an opportunity again to perform like he did in 24 and 2025? I don't think there's another team out there that's looking for a quarterback outside of the draft that would be willing to spend that kind of money. Riley, any teams pop into your head as far as maybe where Darnold could land?
Yeah, this has been like the biggest mental conundrum for me for a year, because I had interviewed Thor Nystrom for Talking Football about a month or two before I interviewed Will, and we had a deep conversation about that. Now, this is before the season even started, and he was talking about, it's a great situation for Sam Darnold because he's got a friendship with, like, not just a working relationship, but he's genuine, like, friends with Kevin O'Connell. It was a perfect situation for him. He's on a good roster. And then he goes on and has a season. And I remember we were doing shows, Will, late in the season, and it's like, dude, this dude's made himself $50 million a year. And then it just fell apart the last 2 games. So it's kind of, you're in a
the Lions had a big hand in that one.
They did. Yeah, they did. But you're in a weird spot now, because if you're Sam Darnold, it's the same thing with Carlton Davis. Like, we want to keep Carlton Davis, but for these guys, like Sam Darnold, this might be his one real shot to get a huge payday, right? So the Vikings are going to want to do right by him. Go get paid. Go get your money. We don't want to keep you. I mean, obviously, they'd love to keep him on the roster, but they're going to play J.J. McCarthy. So do you want to put him on the bench? And are you paying that money, to a guy that you're not starting? It's a conundrum. I don't know if he Vegas, Pittsburgh. I mean, Stafford's going back to L.A. We all know that now. So Darnold is like the top guy. But a year ago, if I would have said that to you, you would have said, man, that's bleak. But
yeah.
He's I don't know. I don't know where he'll end up. But very interested to see where it happens, though.
So when I look at potential landing spots, I think you just mentioned one. Did you mention New York or the Raiders?
Vegas, yeah. The Raiders.
So the Raiders make a lot of sense because they have a ton of money,
mm-hmm.
right? So they can fit a fat contract, inside and draft a rookie. And so last night I was supposed to do mock 3.0. Obviously, I was stuck at the hospital getting MRIs, so I wasn't going to go on after 10 o'clock at night, but we'll do it today. We'll get it done today. So I started playing around with some scenarios because this is going to be the week where I'm actually proposing some trade options, not just for the Lions, but for some other teams. Now, whether we execute them all, during the mock draft tonight, probably not going to happen because it'll just take forever to get it done. But what I would say is this: the Raiders, is there an implication on Shadur Sanders? I know we're going to talk about that. There's been a lot of talk about his attitude and arrogance or cockiness, whatever you want to call it, confidence. If the Raiders somehow don't get Shadur Sanders or, don't get a Cam Ward or even a Jalen Milroe or a Dart or whomever, right? If they don't end up with a top tier talent and they opt to go in a different direction in the first round, I think that you're going to see why in the next week or so. Sam Darnold going to the Raiders makes sense, but I don't think Tom Brady's in favor of it. I don't think that Tom Brady's going to be a big seller on Sam Darnold as a bridge while they level up a rookie over the next year or two. It could happen, but I think that the New York Giants make a little bit more sense. Now, they don't have as much cap space, obviously, but they're still sitting at $38 million effective cap space right now, which would have their rookies signed, and they still have $38 million. You can absolutely put a contract together that maybe only costs them $30 million in cap space this year on their quarterback. There's a lot of ways they can do it, right? You could front load it with a big bonus, but I think the Giants do make some clear sense here, especially where they're sitting. They're at what, number 2, 3? Where are they at in the draft again? 3. If you trade back off of 3 and you don't take a quarterback and you end up with Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and you don't take a quarterback, you could end up with a tackle, which I'm not high on Will Campbell now in the top 5. Someone will probably still take him, but I would go a different direction completely just because of the arms. Anyway, you could still get a top tier athlete in the top 10. And this is so deep, defensive line, you could slide to the top 15 and still end up with a really good football player. But by sliding back and adding some cap space or adding some cap assets, some picks, I think that they're a big player for a free agent quarterback if they don't take a quarterback this year. And that's been, I guess it's been one of my ideas since we kind of started talking about the draft and free agency for the last month is I think a lot of these teams should trade back. The Lions definitely. I've been on that train for a long time and I'm not getting off it. I think moving up is stupid because what it is going to cost is still too much. Now I did some cool things last night with some trade scenarios. They just weren't working out in my favor. Like no matter what I did, it just wasn't working out in my favor. And I kept it true to what you normally see. I even linked up Minka Fitzpatrick, which if we get time to talk about it today, Minka Fitzpatrick trade and what it would take to be a Kirby Joseph, type of trade and what it would cost, what would, go back to the Lions and go out to the other team. It still didn't work in my favor. So I think moving up is the wrong move, but I think moving back is the right move for the Lions. And as far as Sam Darnold goes, if he could end up on the Giants and they move back a little bit and stack some picks to fill other holes on the team, I think that's the better move. Obviously, I don't want any of these teams to get good, but I'll reserve my bias for another day.
When you're saying that, Will, I think you made some excellent points, and I hadn't really thought about it until you said, I'm not so sure if Brady would be so on board with that, and I thought that actually makes sense because if that was like who Tom Brady wanted, you'd think it'd be like a done deal right away, right? He wouldn't have targeted Stafford so heavily. If it's like, hey, Sam Darnold's 27, that's what I want, we probably would all know that by now. So he's a plan B, if anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And according to Adam Schefter, more about Vikings QB Sam Darnold not being expected to be tagged ahead of Tuesday's 4 p.m. tag deadline. So I'm seeing all sorts of them now saying that it doesn't look like he's going to get tagged.
If he's not going to get tagged, then the likely thing is they're working out a deal. That's the other side that I was listening to, even this morning, that they're working on a deal as opposed to the tag, which obviously would benefit the Vikings cap wise.
A deal is in a trade.
Do what?
A deal is in a trade.
No. You talk about Sam Darnold, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
A deal is in a contract, not a tag. Because once you tag them, you tag them. I mean, you could still tag them and then work out a contract. Mm-hmm. Right? You can do it that way too, but not a tag and a trade. It's more so we're trying to work out a contract for him. Some sort of, not really an extension, but it's a new deal.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a 2-year deal. And as far as the guaranteed money at $40.24 million for 1 year of a franchise tag, obviously the Vikings don't want to do that. Especially when they've got their quarterback of the future that they think is already on the squad in JJ McCarthy.
Right. And it defeats the purpose of having him on that rookie contract. They want to take the money that Sam Darnold would be getting paid and spend it in other spots on the team.
Exactly. So since we're talking about quarterbacks here, why don't we skip to Shadur Sanders for just a moment? Riley, you had a topic here about Shadur Sanders. And matter of fact, this was lighting up chat boards last night. I mean, wherever you could find Shadur Sanders, it was everywhere.
Yeah, this is going to be one I'm excited to kind of get your guys' feedback on this because I think it's such an interesting conversation. But NFL insider Josina Anderson posted a detailed report from one quarterback's coach, quote, from a team drafting in the top 7, who referred to Sanders as, quote, brash and arrogant during his interview with the organization in Indianapolis. Anderson reports that the quarterback's coach is not keeping his opinion on Sanders to himself, quote, making his assessment known to a number of people, end quote. So she says, also, I'm purposely not naming the team as to not directly call the team out. I'm just sharing that this coach's personal assessment is the direct opposite from how Sanders came across to many reporters in his press conference with the media at the Combine. So I'm just going to ask you the question, Will, and get your thoughts. How do you kind of read these guys? To me, it makes sense that given who his dad is, he's going to be confident. I don't want somebody to be up there like trying too hard to come across as humble. Just as long as you're authentic and as long as you're genuine. But people are going to feel some type of way about Shadur Sanders. But what are your thoughts? And as you listen to him speak, does he give you confidence in him? Do you does he rub you the wrong way? How do you kind of interpret what you see with Shadur Sanders?
1 second. I don't know whatever's going on in the chat, but let's just have some fun here.
Yeah.
We had someone coming in that was starting crap, and then of course people are defending the channel. So I won't name names, but you guys are all cool. You guys are all good. Appreciate when you guys step up. I don't know why people do that. It's just negativity breeds negativity. You know what I mean? So go be negative on a different channel. But yeah, people questioning like, why would you be at a combine? Like, first of all, number one, it's free to go. Two, you don't have to be anybody to go. Anybody can go. I just do it for different purposes. So I appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys stepping up. But let's make sure that we're good with the true people that belong here. That have been here. The supporters of the channel. You guys should all get along.
And Will Rock is not just a somebody. I'll say that. Neither is Eric, but
yeah, things are changing here, and I've got big news that I'm going to share at some point. I can't share it until I get a couple of things done. I mean, I could, but just for reasons like that, someone doubting something. So I want to make sure that I actually have the thing before I'll share it. That's just how I do my business. All right, so Shadur Sanders here. What is this season called right now? Smoke screens, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's smoke screen season, and this is going to come out not just about Shadur. It's going to come out about other players, that are going to get thrown to the wolves, if you will, with teams, according to reporters or insiders saying that this individual said this, but he's nameless. But this, past GM said this, but they're nameless. Or this team said that, but I'm not going to throw them under the bus, so they're nameless. To me, this is smokescreen and nameless season. That's what it's all about. And unfortunately, Shadur Sanders comes from a very confident family because his father was one of the most confident, but you know what? He proved it on the field. And I do believe that there's a difference between cockiness and confidence. Some people like to adopt the strategy of being quietly confident. Some people prefer to be outwardly confident. Others like to be confident by doing their work on the field. And I would say they're all okay, right? But there's a difference when you cross a line and you're cocky and arrogant. I've never once seen that out of Shadur Sanders in any interview that I've ever seen of him. Doesn't mean that he's not a different person behind closed doors. But this to me just speaks of nameless smoke screens being sent up to try to push his stock somewhere else so another team can take advantage of it. I think that's what it's all about. You're going to see it. Just like how during this week, you usually see players getting accused of things that they've done in the past. All of this information that has been compiled, I mean, thousands of pages of reports on every athlete, it seems like. You're going to find some things you don't want to see. You're going to hear some things that you didn't know before. And some of those things probably shouldn't be shared. But leaks happen. And that's when this whole game of, as an agent, I want my guy to go before you. So what can I spread about you that maybe is going to set you back a little bit? Look, Shadur is absolutely confident. He probably is a little bit cocky. I'd rather have a confident quarterback that actually goes out in the field and proves it. I mean, he took Jackson State from a hole in the wall to a championship. He took Colorado from, declining program to pretty good program. I mean, they did some wonderful things there while he was there. He turned around two organizations with the help of his dad and all of the coaches and his teammates. Let's not be, forgetting to the fact that it took an entire team, right? Just like it takes a village, it took an entire team of people to help rebuild those organizations. But the fact that you're saying that this guy is getting pushed down the list, or what does it say? I'm purposely not naming the team as not to directly call the team out. I'm just sharing this that this coach's personal assessment is the direct opposite of how Sanders came across to many reporters in his press conference. So this is a coach that apparently has said this, which I can't imagine that a coach would honestly go out there and say that. But then I found this by Tony Pauline. I don't even know who Tony Pauline is. But he said, quote, "At the same time, teams are cooling on Shadur Sanders for a number of reasons. The first being that Sanders showed a little to no improvement in his game last season and made some poor choices. People are also a little turned off by his antics since January. The Colorado quarterback chose not to throw at the combine, which isn't unusual at all for a top-rated signal caller. Yet this comes off the Shrine Bowl, where Sanders was expected to at least participate in the individual passing drills. Yet he showed up on the field for just the first day of practice, making a brief visit dressed in sweats." Okay, look, he doesn't want to get injured. You're about to go into the draft. You have every right to do everything that you want to do at your pro day. You're seeing another evolution of the NFL. It's gone from everybody showed up at the combine to put their work in. They wanted to be competitive. They wanted to beat everybody else. They still do, but now some of these guys are wanting to protect themselves. And where did this start, really? Maybe you guys agree or disagree, but I think that this all started from when players started to sit out bowl games. High-profile players started to sit out bowl games, and now that has transitioned into NIL money. These guys have money. Now they're sitting out games. Now they're sitting out combines. They're sitting out everything except for a pro day. And why would you want to sit out everything but a pro day? Well, between your last football game as a collegiate athlete and your pro day, that's the last time that you're going to actually play and be able to perform with some of the guys that you actually performed with. So you have high trust in these guys that your performance is going to be to the highest level when you're at a combine. You're throwing with guys you don't even know. And how do you know that they're not going to intentionally run a little bit deep on a route and you miss the throw? So, I'm not mad at Shadur, but I think that teams saying that they're cooling off on him for being brash or arrogant. Look, if you're the Indianapolis Colts and you're interviewing him at 15, Shadur's not supposed to make it to 15. But if Shadur walks in there and says, "Yeah, I don't even know why you're interviewing me. Like, I'm not going to be here at 14, yeah, that would be a different story. But I think that, interviewing with all of these teams is essential for these players. One, you want to start a relationship. You want to know that you've developed a relationship with these guys, because in 4 or 5 seasons, if you're looking for another contract and you're looking to move to a different team and you put on a pretty good interview with the Colts, and now it's 2030 and you want a second contract and the Colts are looking for a quarterback, they're going to go back and remember, hey, he was really good in the interview. So I don't see Shadur just being cocky and arrogant and trying to throw teams off. I guess that's my long-winded version. Eric, what do you think?
All right, so I am going to defer to Kevin Barr in the chat. He says, if Caleb Williams can go number 1 overall, Shadur Sanders will have no problem getting selected by a QB inept organization.
That's a good point, because Caleb was all over the place. He was just getting tanked by everybody because of his arrogance and his cockiness and his brash, words, and, trying to get stock in an NFL organization and, everything else that went down with Caleb. So, I don't think Shadur is probably going to get selected number 1 overall at all. But again, now we're looking at an Abdul Carter situation where he's expected not to have surgery. How's that going to affect his stock? Are teams willing to just say, okay, enroll it, and if you get hurt, you get hurt, and then you just got to take the time out when it does happen? Or do you fix it now? I'd rather fix it now. So I don't know if that's going to hurt Abdul, and if it does, that could push Shadur Sanders back up the board. Right now, I think he's firmly at 6. Firm. I don't think he's going anywhere else.
I think some great thoughts there, and I think back to one of my friends that used to do daily radio here in Utah. This is somebody I want to get on the show here with us, Tony Parks. He's a big Chicago Bears fan, and he used to do Utah Jazz game days. And he told a story one time. I was talking to him, and he was telling me about how Kobe Bryant he literally, he said there's a difference between the personal ego and performance ego. I think that's kind of what you talked about, Will, where he just said on the court to Jazz fans or any other team, not the Lakers, he seemed like an asshole, frankly. He seemed like he's just a jerk, like, mean look on his face all the time. But he'd go in the locker room and he said Kobe literally knew his name and he would say hi to him and was like considered the greatest teammate. So I think we have to go beyond just what we see on the TV and just see that, oh, this kid's getting paid so much money, he's sitting out a bowl game. Just give these kids a chance and, understand that what you see in an interview or on the field, you don't really know how these guys are in the locker room. And if their teammates respect them, that's all that matters, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that's great context. And this is these kids' future. They get one shot to do this right. And if they're going to do it right, then they need to do what's right for them. And if the NFL teams aren't balking at the fact that, you're doing X, Y, and Z, what does it matter what Tony Pauline or anybody else in the NFL has to say? Or any other beat writer or any other insider or anybody that just picks up a pen and writes. It doesn't matter what any of us say. It's your life, do you, and the only person you have to answer to is the person that's going to hire you. That's it.
Right.
And anybody else that you have in your life. Nobody else matters. Sometimes you just got to tune it all out. That's why I try to tune a lot out and not watch a lot of stuff. And we try to create our own. We highlight people, but we try to create our own so we don't have these mixed bias takes and yeah. All right, Eric, NFL news. What do we got for top 10 free agents headed into next week?
All right. So as we go into free agency next week, we're going to have top 10 free agent linebackers. So there's 10 of them on this list. And we'll go through each one of them. If you guys want to open it up, we'll take turns if you want.
Sure.
And I'm going to start with the first one. And this is Mr. Zack Martin. So Zach was signed to a 1-year, $3.5 million contract. He went from the Arizona Cardinals over to the Philadelphia Eagles. He's 28 years old, so he's been around a little bit. Bond had a career year in Philadelphia last year, one of the best free agent signings in all of the NFL. In his first season as an off-ball linebacker, Bond finished with 151 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, 4 passes defended, and an interception in 16 games. He then upped his game in the postseason, finishing with 33 tackles, 3 passes defended, a forced fumble, and 2 interceptions, including one in the Super Bowl in a victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. Bond is the first player since tackles became an official stat in 1987 to have 150 tackles and 5 forced fumbles in a season. So he comes in as the number 1 free agent linebacker this year. Bond will certainly make more than $3.5 million in 2025 and beyond, as he parlayed his way into a massive contract this offseason. He's the best free agent linebacker available on the market.
So Zack Bond is one of the first guys that I pointed to last year. Interested for the Lions, right? My interest for the Lions was to bring in somebody of his caliber. And then this year, obviously Zack Bond was again on my list. And I have to be honest here. Like, he's 28. He's got 5 years of experience, or he has 5 years of experience. And if the Lions could pay him $10 million a year and get him on a 2 or 3 year deal, why wouldn't you? You're paying Alex Anzalone, what, $6-7 million a year? You could easily add Zach to the Lions cap sheet, and it would fit. It would also take care of a lot of situations in that defense. The more I look at the linebacker draft for this season, the linebacker prospects for this season, it is slim to none after the second round. If you don't get a linebacker at the end of the first, early into the second, I feel like and I could be way off on some of the lower unknown guys, but if you get past Demetrius Knight, Donovan, Ezra Cowell, whether he plays edge or linebacker, even, Chris Paul, he's probably a early day 3 candidate. Like, I'm not totally sold on his ability. The more I watched him, he seems erratic at times. I would love to have a guy like Zach Bond that could come in and just settle in.
Yeah. Looking at Spotrac, it says his average market value was about 9.7 million.
There you go. $10 million, man. Get him in. I would love to see Zach Bond become a Detroit Lion. I would not be afraid. To me, that's second tier money, right? When it's top tier money for linebackers, but it's second tier money when you look at free agents overall. The likelihood of the Lions bringing back Carlton Davis is next to none. So if you're not spending 15 mil or 13.8 or 14.5 on Carlton Davis, you can afford to bring in a linebacker like Zach Bond. So he's definitely high on my list. Who's next?
Oh, let's see. Mr. Bobby Wagner. He's 35 years old. He went from Washington over to the Washington Commanders. And his 2025 salary was $6.5 million. He's a future Hall of Famer. Wagner was still great in his first year with the Washington Commanders, a second-team All-Pro. Wagner finished with 132 tackles, 2 sacks, and 4 passes defended in 17 games at the Mike linebacker position. Wagner has been an All-Pro for 11 straight years and still plays at a high level in his mid-30s. He had 25 tackles and a half a sack in 3 playoff games. A 1-year deal may be suitable for Wagner at this stage of the game. He was vital in the Commanders jumping their win total from 4 wins last year to 12 this season, and he is a leader for any defense. Looking at his market cap value, he's at about $7.2 million.
What are your thoughts, Riley? I'm out on Bobby 1,000%. What do you think?
Yeah, I remember he had the 1 year in LA, and it seemed like he was still good, but he was just so dominant. There's like, if the Lions brought in Bobby Wagner, it would be kind of, to me, I'd be like, that's more name than, actual production. Obviously, everything Eric just read, he's a good player, but I wouldn't expect, any season that he has from here on out to be as good as the season he just completed.
He's 35 years old, and at $6, $7, $8 million, whatever, that Zach Bond, 1,000%. Zach Bond. Don't even waste your time on Bobby. Like, it just doesn't make. Now, if it was a $2 million deal, okay, bring him in for camp and see if he can latch on and stay. And the same thing with the next guy, Dre Greenlaw, at 28 years old, coming from the 49ers. Salary in 2024 was $8.2 million. He had an Achilles injury, though, that sidelined him for the most of the season. It was the season before, though. I think it was 23 that he ruptured his Achilles. And then last year, he had a brief stint with an injury, and they'd shut him down for the season, if I remember correctly.
Yep, correct.
So he's someone that, you could probably get a prove-it deal on. I wouldn't be out on Greenlaw at 28 years old. I would definitely not be paying him anything north of $5 million for a 1-year prove-it deal. And it would have to be incentive laden, obviously, to give him an opportunity to prove it. But he's been well rested now. You can only imagine that he's ready to go. Mm-hmm. I'd be okay with Dre Greenlaw. If you can't get Zach Bond, again, I'd have to analyze what he fits. Does he fit, our style of defense or not? That is something that I have not looked at. I don't know if he's more of a 3-4 or a 4-3 style of a linebacker. Some of these guys are cross-trained enough that they could do both. The Lions desperately need a cover linebacker. 2 of them, really. But they need guys that can cover. We have all the hitters and the run stuffers in the world everywhere on this defense. We need guys that can cover. And it can't always be a corner or a safety jammed up in the box doing the work for them. At some point, you have to be able to just let your linebackers do what they're there to do. Look, if you're going to bring in another safety, I get it. If the Lions lose a safety this year, which is possible, it's very possible, then yeah, you need guys like Dre Greenlaw and Zach Bond that can cover, that can play the middle of the defense and not allow us to get burned. I do not want to see what we saw last season all over again. The linebackers were the weakest part. You know, your buddy Tony was right. If we were healthy, it was a different story. But once you got past Malcolm Rodriguez, I feel like the talent level just fell off a cliff. Riley, Eric, in or out on Dre Greenlaw?
Well, Dre Greenlaw is his market value is 6.7 million. Might be a little high for him.
7.5?
6.7.
6.7. Yeah. So if you could get a 1 year, $5 million prove it deal with some escalators, they could get him up to 6.5 or 6.7 or whatever. It still might make sense.
Well, then he's the perfect Brad Holmes pickup.
Yeah, exactly.
He's injured. He's injured, so if absolutely he would be a fit here in Detroit. Since we love absolutely love them injured players.
When you look at his injury history, he's got 5 main targets that are on his report. So he had a pedal Achilles tear, obviously, in 2024, February 11 of 2024. And October 12, of 23, he had a hamstring sprain, grade 1. 2022 in October, he had a left calf strain, grade 1. January of 2022, he had a leg calf strain, grade 1. And in January 30, that was the same time, he also had a hamstring. He had a hamstring and a calf strain. And then in 2021, he had an inguinal groin strain, grade 2. And in 2020, he had a leg quad bruise and then concussion all the way back in August of 2020 coming out of camp.
Lots of leg stuff.
Yeah, he's got a lot of lower body stuff. 1 concussion. I'm sure he's had more, but, you know, the ones that are reported anyway. So, yep, he falls in line with the Brad Holmes MO. I mean, there's always an injury risk here. So, again, Zack Martin is still my number 1 target.
All right.
What's next?
So up next, we have Ernest Jones. He's only 26 years old. In 2024, he played for the Seattle Seahawks. His salary was $3.1 million. One of the better run stoppers in the league, Jones needs to find a permanent home in free agency after being traded twice in the last year. Jones had 138 tackles last season, his 3rd straight season with 100-plus tackles. Of the runs Jones faced, 23.9% of the plays resulted in a tackle. If a team needs a run-stopping linebacker, Jones is a good bet. His best fits would be the Seahawks, the Cardinals, and the Commanders, and his market value, get this, $13 million.
Yeah, so do you know a lot about Ernest Jones at all, Riley? Because, I mean, honestly, I've not followed his career often. I mean, obviously we heard a lot about him last year, but 13 million?
No, that I knew as soon as Eric said that, you know, I didn't know if you were going to whistle or something, but I knew something was coming where you're going to imply that that's too rich for your liking. I think I just remember that weird trade, like right at the start of the year last year, he got traded from the Rams over to the Titans and then ended up on Seattle. I think it's a tough mix here because if you don't have, and the other thing is the Lions need to plug and play players right now. You don't want to have a linebacker doing what Terrion did last year at the corner position where they're having to play and learn so much on the fly. If you could bring in a linebacker that has some playing experience, I think the age is really good, 25, 26, but I don't know that 13. Just like you said, I mean, if you could get Zack Bond for the same amount, then suddenly I think Ernest Jones doesn't look as appealing if it's, you know, more or even the same kind of price point.
Yeah. And like Will was saying, we need somebody that can cover, not just somebody that's a run stopper. Right. And that's what it seems like Ernest would be. So up next, we have Nick Bolton from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's 25 years old. His salary last year was $1.5 million on his rookie contract. So he's an underrated player at his position. Bolton has been a consistent good player on the Chiefs defense during the Super Bowl runs. He finished with 106 tackles and 3 sacks to go with 6 passes defended. Bolton had 100-plus tackles in 3 of his 4 seasons, providing great value for the Chiefs as a second-round pick. excellent against the run. Bolton is a strong player at the mic. The Chiefs may just let him go elsewhere, as they have with back 7 players in the past. But that may not be the best decision. His best fits are the Chiefs, the Titans, and the Raiders. And his annual market value is $12.3 million. These guys get more expensive as we go here.
Yeah, it makes you appreciate Alex Anzalone's deal a whole lot more. I will say this. I don't think the Lions are interested in Nick Bolton simply because he's a middle linebacker and we already have 2 of them. Matter of fact, we have 3 of them if Malcolm Rodriguez sticks around. Lions need an outside linebacker. Nick Bolton, again, I don't see him sniffing a Detroit Lions locker room at all anytime in the future. But I will say this about Nick Bolton. So when I look at measurements and I try to identify the best players at the position, not only now, but, you know, in the past, and how I compare him to players now, at 5'11", 237 pounds, you normally wouldn't look at that player and say, yeah, I think you're going to be a great football player just based on your size. So he has obviously a lot more, you know, underneath the body type in the brain, right? He's got to be shoulder up for him because he's putting himself in a way to win. And at that size, you just wouldn't expect it. And same thing with Malcolm Rodriguez, you know, a little bit shorter, but stocky, and he finds a way to win. And it's about being smart on the football field. So hell of an athlete. I think Nick Bolton is one of the best linebackers in the game. I want to back up to Ernest Jones for a minute.
Okay.
So Ernest, the reason why I'm out on this guy, I mean, he's got prototypical size, 6'2", 230. I think that, you know, he's a great athlete. I think he's a good football player, but his coverage grades are terrible. And I don't want to see a guy giving us problems in the passing game or covering tight ends, or we're going to see a lot of halfbacks streaking down the field this year, I think. I think we're going to see a lot more screen game getting thrown against us. And the Lions have to be ready for it, because anytime that the screen game was utilized against us, the Bills I want to say the Commanders did it a little bit, but it seems like anytime they isolated our linebackers on a halfback or running back, we had big trouble. And I don't want to see that again this year. I want to see where the Lions are ready to be able to cover these guys coming out of the backfield, because it's something that we're going to be using, I think, more this year too. So Ernest Jones, I'm out because of the coverage. Nick Bolton, I'm out because he's a middle linebacker. We already have plenty. I mean, Jack Campbell's here to stay. Who was the other one? Dre Greenlaw. Let me look something up real quick.
You know, a name that came to mind for me, Azeez Ojulari.
Oh yeah.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. I'm acting like I had that thought first, but that was one of the, when Will did a whole segment on that. I don't know, a few weeks ago. It was when you were out of town, Eric. It was, I felt like it was like a guitarist like doing a phenomenal riff, and it was when he was down, I was just like, oh, okay, all right, damn, I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that up, but that was very convincing. Ojulari would be sweet, but yeah, it's tough, man. We're trying to find, like, it's hard to do everything right. With, do we get a tackling machine? Do we get somebody that has experience? Do we get somebody that's going to fit the culture? Do we get somebody that can coverage? But that's what makes these conversations fun.
I think all these guys are fine in the locker room. Dre Greenlaw's got a better coverage grade. He's also 6 foot 230, so he's right in the range. I prefer linebackers at 6'1", 6'2", and it's funny because, you know, when Jack Campbell was brought in, he's like, what, 6'5"? You just don't see big linebackers anymore. And I think that if they're above 6'2", it's like, oh my goodness, you know, he's too tall. I think anything between 6'1" and 6'3" is like that perfect makeup for an outside linebacker that, you know, can also rush the end, right? Get after the quarterback, take care of the outside linebacker duties and coverage. So Dre Greenlaw is definitely, you know, one on the list. Again, it's got to be a prove it deal. It cannot be a big deal for him because of his injury history. And then there's Lavonte David. So I did highlight Lavonte David when we started bringing in some of the Bucs coaches, specifically Casey Rogers. You know, how many of these guys are going to want to travel and you know, be with some of the guys that they worked with in the past? And Lavonte David is one of them. But 35 years old again. So here you're looking for a guy that is a locker room guy. He's someone that has a lot of experience, but he's old. How much does he have left in the tank? Does he have another year in him? What's his contract going to look like? Those are all questions that I don't really have a ton of answers for right now, but I would not invest heavily. His coverage grade is marginal. He's better in the run defense. Overall, though, he's just a leader of men. I mean, he's a really good dude when it comes to locker room. He's 6'1", 233, so he's got the prototypical size that I look for. Anyway, not that it's correct, but at least it's what I look for. Coverage grade could be better. I mean, it's good, but it could be better. He's better in run defense and pass rush versus coverage, which is not a bad trade-off, but at 35 years old, yeah, I'm probably out. Out.
His market cap is 6.7.
Yeah, I'm out on that. It's so if you're paying Anzalone $6 million a year, I mean, that guy deserves a raise, right? I don't know how long Anzalone's going to play. I don't even know how old he is right now. He's got to be 28, 29, somewhere in that range. Anzalone probably deserves a little bit of an extension, but I think that this is where the Lions really need to attack the linebacker room. And again, the more I look at the draft, I'm thinking that it's going to come in free agency. I think that the Lions are probably going to add at least one, if not two, linebackers in free agency. Clip that, right? If not one, at least two in free agency, and then try to find one in the draft. Jamie Sherwood was next on this list.
Yeah.
Now, this guy at 25 years old, former team is New York Jets, hopefully. He could be the next Zach Bond of the future, right? That's what it says. He's this year's Zach Bond amongst the off-ball linebacker class, as he had his breakout campaign in his final season in his rookie contract. He finished with 158 tackles and led the NFL with 98 solo tackles. And he had 2 sacks. Look, I don't care about the sacks. I care about what he does in coverage. He defended 3 passes. He's a converted safety, which reminds me of like the Nick Emanawari, who's coming in this year's draft, who's huge. Love the ability for him and where the Lions could end up taking him, hopefully. But Sherwood could improve in coverage as he still gets regular snaps, but his athleticism really stood out on tape. When I look at some of his work here, last year he only had Jesus. What are they saying? Regular snaps. He had 1,063 snaps.
Wow.
558 in coverage. So CBS Sports says he still needs regular snaps. I think you missed something. CBS.
Yeah.
Because he had probably the most snaps out of anybody. But his coverage grade was a 66. Now, PFF, take it with a grain of salt. We'll look at, the tape and do the eye test. This is a guy I would bring in over everybody else right now. Sherwood is a guy that I would bring in. Yes, even over Zach Bond, because he's young. He's someone that can grow with your team. You can invest in him. Do we have a cap number on this guy?
7.2.
All day. And a bag of Doritos.
It's interesting, too, as you point out, when you're reading that, the NFL's solo tackle leaders over the last 3 seasons, Foyesade Oluokun for the Jaguars did it 22, 23, and then Sherwood in 24. Sherwood was a 5th-round pick, and Oluokun was a 6th-round pick. Like, it's just crazy that you have a 5th and a 6th-round draft pick leading the NFL in tackles over the last 3 seasons.
So I mentioned earlier that when you get out of like the 2nd and 3rd round, it gets real slim, right? For linebackers this year. These are the guys that how do I want to say this? Some fans, some creators, right? They complain about whatever because they feel like Brad made a bad pick or didn't pick up somebody in free agency. A guy like Jamie Sherwood is the exception, not the rule. So we cannot get, what's the word I'm looking for? We can't get salty.
Think it's going to happen again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we can't get salty against Brad because he doesn't find Jamie Sherwood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These are the diamonds that are so covered in muck and everything else that it takes a lot of work, not only for the player, but for the coaching staff to develop them, the team to invest and actually take a shot on this guy and then let him do it on the football field. And then it worked and it clicked. Very rarely does that happen. And that's why I say F them picks to the 5th, 6th, and 7th round, because it's highly unlikely these things are ever going to happen again. But when they do, it's great. It's great. So Jamie Sherwood, you have to take a flyer on this guy. What was the number again? 7'7", 6'7", something like that?
7-2.
7-2. So 3 years, 24 million, 14 million guaranteed. Bring him in. That is the guy that I would love to see the Lions. Now, what I don't know is, so he's drafted what year again? 2020, 21?
Let me tell you real quick. He was 2021.
I don't think that we had a visit with him. So when you look at free agents, and I'm noticing a trend now online too, you're starting to see some of the local writers mention that Brad met with these guys in the past. It's a trend that I started putting together a couple years ago, is following who Brad has met with all the way back to, 2015 with the Rams, because those are the players. Well, now we're probably into 2018 with the Rams, because those players are washing out of the NFL. They're a little bit older. But when you look at like Asante Samuel, for instance, someone that Brad met with in the past, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. But Jamie Sherwood, he is numero uno. Zach Bond is number 2 on my list. Who's Robert Spillane?
All right. So Robert Spillane's another excellent run stopper. Spillane has 158 tackles and 7 passes defended last season. He came from the Las Vegas Raiders and he made $3.5 million last year. Spillane had 22.5% of runs ending up in a tackle and doesn't miss a lot of tackles. With consecutive 140 plus tackle seasons, Spillane shouldn't have a problem finding a starting job for 2025. His best fits are the Raiders, Rams, and Broncos, and his market value is $10.4 million per year.
What are your thoughts, Riley? Do you have any thoughts on this guy? I honestly have not watched him.
Yeah, I knew who he. I'm aware of him. Kind of right in the middle of the pack. At least as far as these names that we're going over today. I agree. I'd rather Zach Bond or Jamie Sherwood, but Spillane's a good player. I mean, he's a good player, and I'll be honest, man. I mean, when they signed Alex Anzalone, I wasn't elated on that. I literally thought, oh man, of course they got to bring in a guy that Campbell knows and has a working history with, and same thing with Aaron Glenn. I thought that made sense, but dude, maybe I just didn't know how good Anzalone was before, and so
highly underrated. Highly underrated.
Yeah. I mean, I remember talking with one of my buddies about, dude, this Malcolm Rodriguez kid is a stud. He's like, yeah, he is, but he's like, your best linebacker is Anzalone. I'm like, I don't know, man. I think Rodriguez is really good. And then I really quickly found out a couple years ago. I'm like, okay, yeah, Rodriguez is good for his role, but Anzalone is a stud. And so I was not as high on him coming in. So Spillane might be a similar type of a deal for somebody. He's proven. He's 29 years old, so he's a year younger than Anzalone. But yeah, I don't know schematically what that fit would be, but I do know that Robert Spillane is a good player.
So former local Michigan guy, played for Western Michigan. Matter of fact, Western Michigan Broncos. First team was the Titans, second team was the Steelers, and then obviously with the Raiders since 2023. He's got good size. I mean, he's 6'1", 229, so that prototypical size. His coverage grade is off the charts terrible, but he's great in the run defense. He's great in the pass rush. His overall grade's around a 68.4. It's not somebody that I'm looking for. He must have played inside linebacker. I can only imagine. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah, it says inside linebacker.
Yeah, so I'm out on Spillane.
I think Brad Holmes you'd rather draft somebody. I know I said earlier you don't want to rely on a rookie so much, given where the team's at right now, but you might draft somebody over Spillane. Or if Spillane was better in coverage, that might be a different story as well.
I think the move, honestly, is you bring in a rookie if you can, but that might be that Chris Paul in the 4th round, and you bring in another guy like Jamie Sherwood that you signed to a really good deal. He's obviously your future with Jack Campbell. You still have Alex, and thanks, Marine said he was 30 years old, Alex Anzalone. You still have Alex. I think this is his final year of his deal. And you still have Rodrigo. He'll be back at some point. But the Lions need a hard reset in the linebacker room. I doubt that they get Bond and Sherwood, but if you could imagine for a moment, if they could spend $20 million a year, $25 million a year. Now, don't quote me on these numbers because I haven't looked at the percentage of cap to the rest of the teams. If it was $25 million a year and you've got Alex Anzalone, Zach Bond, Jamian Sherwood, Malcolm Rodriguez, Jack Campbell, that's your room. That's a pretty damn good room. 6 high quality guys. Who's up next? Let's get through the next 2 real quick.
Yeah, so the next one's older one again. This is Eric Kendricks. He's 33. He played for the Cowboys. He made $3 million last year. Kendricks didn't sign until July last season, but should garner interest in free agency as a veteran presence. The Cowboys were a disaster in 2024, but Kendricks finished with 138 tackles, 3 sacks, and 2 interceptions at the mic. And his value is $6.8 million in free agency.
I'm just going to be this quick with him. I'm out. I don't want nothing to do with Eric Kendricks. I think that he's a good football player, but I'm good. Anything you want to add to that, Riley or Eric?
No, I think you said it perfectly.
Yeah, a little on the old side for me, and
Exactly. Yeah.
just I'm hoping we can get somebody that is coming off of their first. Not somebody coming off their 3rd or 4th or 6th contract,
Like a Sherwood.
Those are all good for 1-year prove it deals, right? These older guys that you just need to fill a hole with a proven vet that can help your team grow. When do you normally see that, right? I think that you normally see that when you do what the Lions did in 21. You have the first and or second youngest team for 21 and 22. Right, throughout the season, obviously the age kind of went up and down, but you're bringing in older vets to help coach up the rooms, develop a locker room, teach the guys on the field. You've got some known commodities, there that can help. That's when you see older players come in. The Lions, I think, are still trying to stay younger and sprinkle in these vets to kind of give you not only continuity with the type of scheme that you're running, but also make sure that the level of play is up there. So this last guy, Tyrell Dodson, who's he? And this is actually a guy that I like.
Yeah, so he's 27 years old. He played for the Miami Dolphins last year. He made $2.3 million. Dodson is a better player than the tape shows, mainly because he's used incorrectly. He's strong in coverage. And a player that is better against the run when put in the right position. Dodson finished with 107 tackles, 3 interceptions, and 6 passes defended last season. A change of scenery would be good for Dodson, who is worth taking a flyer on this offseason. Now, this guy comes in with a market value of $5 million.
Riley, I'll kick it to you first.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know a ton about Dodson, but I know you just mentioned too that you like him. So I was actually going to pass that over to you and ask kind of what it is about him that you like.
Coverage. His coverage is incredible. Like this guy, this guy knows what he's doing. He finds, in space, I don't know if there's a better linebacker. There's a couple really good linebackers, but in space, this guy has been proven time and time again that he knows what he's doing. And I don't see a lot of running backs or tight ends really get the, business end, or give him the business end. I don't see him get beat a ton. He's younger than some of the other guys we've been talking about. He's 27. So I want to say that he's coming into, is this his 2nd contract?
Yep.
I think it is. Let me look up his PFF grade real quick.
Oh, no, this would be his 3rd contract because he's got 6 years experience.
Gotcha. So coverage grade 82.9. He was the 5th best last season, according to PFF. Where he's bad, though, is against the run. Now, I know they said that he was misused, so I'm going to have to watch some tape today to see where or how he was misused. But his pass rush, not the greatest, and his run defense, not the greatest, but his coverage was really good. So what this would tell me is if you can get this guy for, $4 or $5 million a year and you use him situationally, where it's maybe more of a 3rd down linebacker, he comes in coverage, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that may be a lot of money to spend on just a rotational guy, but I think that if teams are smart, at least for me, I would rather have guys rotating in and out. It's kind of what I said last week about, or maybe it was this week, about Aiden Hutchinson, and that when you're constantly blitzing, you're wearing out your defense, especially your defensive ends. So if you blitz less, Aiden's going to have way more in the tank in the fourth quarter. And so will your defensive linemen. By not blitzing, you saw what the Eagles were able to do. Why did they have such a late push in that Super Bowl? They were rested enough. So there's something to, I always talk about patterns, but in philosophy of the football game, the less you blitz, the healthier and stronger your guys are going to be deeper into the game. Yep. So bringing guys like this in that you're rotating, maybe he's coming in on second and third down. You put your run stuffers in on first down, and you're giving him a rest. If they're going for it on fourth down, if it's an obvious passing situation, you probably leave them in. But if it's a run down, you're going to sub them back out for somebody. So I like this option. Big time. He's 6 foot 237, but he plays much bigger. And I like what they said, that he's actually better against the run because he was misused. Does anybody know what defense the Dolphins ran last year? I don't remember if... Didn't they have a Fangio defense at one time? 3-4 scheme. So maybe he's misused because he was in a 3-4 and belongs in a 4-3.
Could be. I'm going to have to do some work on that one. I'm going to have to go and watch some tape and kind of go back to what he did in college to kind of see where maybe he fits.
It's a perfect, though, what you're saying there too, Will, where given where the team's at, like it makes sense to pay for like a specialist kind of a thing. Not that he's just a specialist, but I mean, but not everybody can be Steph Curry. You know, you have to have, or LeBron James has always had like guys that you've got your main players, and then you just have guys that can defend and shoot threes. And then in football, all of our main positions are kind of occupied, right? So I think that would make perfect sense. You maybe spend a little bit more. We're paying that much for a guy that wouldn't play X amount of snaps, but if he fits that role where you can bring him in and it fits the puzzle, of the team perfectly, I think that's a great use of resources.
So let me give you a little context on this guy. I just pulled some information here. So back when he was drafted, coming out of Texas A&M, Texas A&M's been producing some pretty darn good football players lately. But he came out at 237, 6 foot, 31 3/4 inch arms, which is not bad for a linebacker. I mean, they're not the longest things on the planet, but he was rated as a 5.6. So a candidate for a bottom of a roster or a practice squad. Well, they got that wrong. He ran a 4.6, so that's not terrible. A 1.61 split, 9.10 broad, 24 on the bench. But listen to this. This is exactly where I was just thinking a minute ago. If he was misused, why was he misused? So several SEC schools coveted Dodson. The 2015 Tennessee Class 5A Mr. Football. 111 tackles, 32 for loss, 16 TDs on offense. He was a two-way player. The Aggies landed him, and he played in all 13 games as a true freshman. He had 27 tackles, 1.5 for loss. He also led the team with 105 tackles as a sophomore, and he just started filling the stat sheet as a 13-game starter with 11.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, and 6 pass breakups. The dude obviously knows his way around to football. He's got good ball skills. But get this, inside linebacker prospect in either an odd or an even front with the potential to compete as a Sam linebacker in a 4-3 system.
There you go.
That's the answer. So he should have been probably put into a Sam system or 4-3 as a Sam, and he's probably been misused this entire time, which, look, that's another thing. You know, when I analyze prospects, free agents, I look at the defense. What are they running? Does the guy even compare, is the one they're running even compare close to what the Lions are running? It's not often that you can just take a 3-4 guy and throw him in a 4-3. It doesn't always work, especially when you're talking about edge rushers or outside linebackers. It's two totally different styles of a defense. Different sizes, different weights. In a 4-3, you've got a bigger can-crushing end, and then you've got your speed end, and then you have a nose and a defensive tackle, or you have 2 defensive tackles. In a 3-4, you have a nose, you have an end, and then you have either a defensive tackle or another end on the other side, but it's usually defensive tackle, nose, and an end. And then you got 2 outside linebackers. So really you have 3 guys that are kind of rushing the quarterback. As where a 4-3, you typically have 2 guys that are rushing the quarterback, and then your natural defensive line, fits with your defensive tackle and your nose guard that you're trying to get pressure with. So hey, look, the guy's a fit. What was his dollars?
5.
3 years. 3 years. You know, you give him an Anzalone contract. 3 for 18.
Yeah, this says 3 for 15.
Yeah, I'd go 3 for 18. Lock him up.
And it says that he went undrafted in 2019 and was picked up by Buffalo out of Texas A&M.
I like Derek Lewis's comment in here. He says, I had to step away. It looks like I missed a lot. I kept telling people, family, don't bug me before 10:30 a.m. I'm rocked in.
There you go. Get rocked in.
Yeah. You know what? We're going to get the merch going. I'm working on it. So
That's a great comment.
yeah, I'm looking at starting a similar profile to another writer so I can start writing again, because I write all the time, but I don't put it out. Like when we started this, I had my blog up, I had the website going, and I was writing almost every day, and then I would turn those into podcasts. Well, I stepped away from that because my web developer just disappeared, didn't finish what he was supposed to do. And I don't know the first thing about building a WordPress site. So I just said, whatever, we'll start over again another day. But I at least got to get writing again. And then that way I have a website where we can start putting more merch. And then I want to pull subscriptions and things like that off of YouTube to go somewhere else. But we'll do like a $99 or 99-cent member fee on YouTube just for people to, if they want to stay a member, you know, they can. But it won't really help us a whole lot because YouTube takes so much of the money anyway.
Hey, one last quick thought on that Dodson too. You guys brought it first full circle perfectly. But the last thing I was thinking was, if you are his agent and Brad Holm calls and says, "Hey, we're going to play you in the right situation. We're going to pay you more money that you've been making, and you're going to a team that's just finished 15-2," like that's a no-brainer.
I'm ecstatic.
I would think.
Yeah, I'm ecstatic at that point. All right, I just turned ads off for the rest of the day. We didn't quite get to 75 likes, but it looks like we have about 80 people in. Do us a favor. If you guys have not subscribed yet, please, 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 please smash that button. I want to give out these mini helmets, and the only way we can do it is if we get to 10K, and then we've got a big 10K prize. It could be a free trip on one of the away games excursions. It could be 2 tickets to one of the games this season at the Lions. But we'll let you know what it is. And that's another thing. Don't forget to visit the description. All of the links are there for the away game excursions. It's just $575, I think, for all of them to put in your deposit. If the price for the tickets and everything else is lower than our expected number, we will lower the rate after May 15th. But I won't know the full price of the game tickets. I mean, I have a really good idea of what they're going to be based on the conversations that I've had with the Bears, the Vikings, and the Packers this offseason already. But the goal is to make it affordable. So far, everyone is going to include a hotel stay the night before so that we can go down the night before and have some fun with it. Sounds like my mic's clicking out a little bit. Try to fix that.
I don't hear it.
Yeah, my
It's every once in a while.
My noise gate for some reason was dialed way too high. I don't know how I did that. Something must have reset on Roadcaster's side. All right, what else we got for the day? I don't even have the sheet in front of me. Let me see what we got.
Let's dip into something a little bit different right now. So, as some of you guys know, I'm a big fan of the UFL. Will likes the UFL. Well, the United Football League, they just had some turmoil. UFL training camp started yesterday in Arlington, Texas. And for the past week, for 5 days, the 24 quarterbacks of the United Football League were expected to report to their training camps today or yesterday, but they were on strike. They did a 5-day strike. And after staging a holdout of sorts over the weekend, as the UFL heads into its second season following a merger between the USFL and the XFL, the quarterbacks were reportedly frustrated by a raise over last year's $55,000 base salary they called negligible. They collectively decided not to attend a QB's only training camp Thursday through Sunday in Arlington, Texas. The quarterbacks were also seeking year-round health care insurance. With the holdout over training camps for all 8 UFL teams, have begun with the game starting Friday, March 28th at 8 p.m. with the St. Louis Battlehawks traveling to take on the Houston Roughnecks. So that's going to be the first game on a Friday night. It's going to be on Fox. Everybody can watch it. I implore everyone to watch it. But what these guys were holding out for is they want healthcare, and they don't just want healthcare during the season. They want it to be year round. And some of these guys are playing for multiple seasons. Some of these guys, like the QB Perez there for the Stallions, he's been there for 3 or 4 seasons. And ever since he left the Lions off their practice squad, he's been with the Stallions, and they've won a couple of championships now. And these guys, they think they deserve a raise, which they probably do. And I don't think they're asking for way too much. These guys only make $55,000 for a season. That's not a whole lot of money. Now, that's more than, somebody working at McDonald's makes, but not that much. So getting these guys year-round healthcare and a little bump in money, I don't see a problem with that at all. But we as fans, we need to step up our game. We need to start buying tickets to these games and going to these games. I will be going to the April 4th game, the home opener, and I hope to see a whole bunch of you guys there because the UFL is really good football.
Yeah, I'm hoping I can be there. I think I gotta go to Cleveland that week. Riley, so you have a little mock draft roundup here by, looks like M Live put something out. So getting into some Lions news, what's on the tip of your tongue?
Yeah, so it was a roundup. Kyle Austin from M Live. Now he just kind of went and did composed all these different mock drafts, and I think right now it's almost a foregone conclusion, at least according to most national writers, that the Lions are going to take a defensive lineman in the first round. So just a couple of names. In fact, let me just click here. It says it's not so much a question of what position the Lions will target in the first round of the NFL draft, but for those completing projections, it's a matter of which defensive lineman the Lions will take. So some names that he mentioned: James Pierce from Tennessee. Says it feels like he is mostly viewed as just an outside linebacker speed type, but that is still a worthwhile draft target for a team like the Lions. We just got done talking about linebacker positions. So kind of a blend OL and linebacker there. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. No one helped themselves more at the Senior Bowl than Zabel, who played primarily left tackle in 2024 for North Dakota. Shamar Stewart, I know I've heard his name on the show here. Derek Harmon, just a handful of names there. So I guess really my thought and question for you guys is, are you, I know, Will, you've done a lot of mock drafts, but are you leaning towards that being the case, that if the Lions stand pat and things stay as they are now, that it will be a defensive lineman that the Lions select at the end of round 1?
That's if they stay at 28. So some of the mocks that I was doing last night while I was in the waiting room at the hospital, I was like, I can't believe that Gray Zabel was slipping. And it was some of the trades that I was doing. I'll put it to you this way. I would go up and all right, I'll just say it. Someone will probably steal it later. I think the Broncos are a big trade partner this year, and possibly the Falcons as well. And the reason why I say that is, here, let me pull up the Falcons.
I was going to ask you, Will, when you are at these hospital visits and stuff, do the doctors have to tell you, like, hey, we need you to like put your phone down or your laptop down or something, like hang on for a second on the mock drafts and projections and all that stuff?
I tried to take it into the MRI room and they were like, yeah, you can't do that.
Well, like, sir, we need you to leave that at the door.
Yeah. So yeah, I almost got in trouble. So the Falcons, like, I wasn't even thinking, MRI, magnetic, it would have been a big problem. So the Falcons, they have 3 picks, right? Is that what I'm seeing? They have 3 picks this year. If I'm not missing something here, I think they only have 4. They have a round 1, a 2, a 4, and a 7. So that's why I believe that they're going to be a trade partner for the Lions at 46. So if the Lions can move up to 46, maybe we end up losing 60, or if the Lions do some other finagling before that trade, then we can get them another pick, maybe dump off one of our 7th or 6th round picks. We got a bunch of 7s and add some capital to them to be able to spend in this draft, but also help us out by moving forward in the draft. So that's why I think that the Falcons make sense, because they don't have but 4 picks. I'm sure that they would love to add to that. Conversely, with the Broncos, so let me pull up. I found this Tankathon website that I've never used before, and that's also adding some good information here as far as who's got what and where. Full order. Here we go. So when I look at the Broncos, they're at pick 20. And the reason why I say the Broncos, for 2 reasons. One, that gets us ahead of Minnesota and Green Bay. We're not going to jump Chicago. It's just not happening. But pick 20 for me is like that spot where I feel you're either going to be in or out on the best edge rushers, defensive tackles in this draft. Possibly even one of the best offensive linemen in this draft, at Gray Zabel and others. If we can move up to 20, and yes, that is going to involve a player trade because they need a safety. So at pick 20, we move up, we add some cap, and then we somehow move back up again to get into the mid 40s, low 40s, or even the back end of the 30s. I think that's where the Lions are going to be able to do their most damage. So the question I would have for everybody in the comments and in the chat, would you be okay if the Lions somehow went from, what do we have? 28, 60, and then 101. Is that what we have in the top 100? Does anybody know?
Check.
I'm forgetting what we have.
Yeah, 28, 60.
And then 101, right?
Yes.
And then 133. So right now we have 3, let's call it, in the top 100. What if we were able to pull 4 in the top 80, 4 in the top 100, and you're only going to get 4 good players out of this draft? That's it. I don't see where the Lions need more than that.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. So if you're able to score, a first round pick at 20, a first round pick at 28, a mid pick at like 39 to 46, and then 60 or 65, or even 80 or 76, somewhere in that range, I think that's the best play. And I don't think that it's going to cost the Lions a ton to do that. And I'll highlight tonight what I'm talking about. But for the Lions to be able to grab a defensive tackle or a defensive lineman like you were asking, I think that it's pretty simple. The answer is yes, they need to get one at a minimum. I don't know where it's coming from. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's going to be 28. I nobody does. But when you look at this draft, it's like it goes from really, really good, and then it falls off a cliff. And the linebackers they're not as deep as what I was hoping they were going to be. If you don't take a linebacker at 28 or before 46, forget about it. If you're looking for a day one starter, and that could be me totally misjudging the linebackers in the later parts of the draft, I don't think that there is a day one starter or even a high rotational player after the second round. I think you might have a guy that could show up, that could shock us, but I don't think that this draft is built for them as much as it is for the edge and the defensive tackle position.
Yeah.
But I see a flurry. I see a flurry of edge and tackles going off the board at once in the second round.
If they make these trades, well, then that shakes up the what position. So that's a great answer. What do you think, Eric, on the chances that the Lions take a defensive lineman?
Oh, I think it's 100%. My question is this for you guys. All right. So I have never in my life, this might be good for some people in the chat too. I have never in my life ever done a mock draft. I've never done one. So where do you go to do a mock draft?
You go to PFF. Just type in PFF mock draft simulator.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
you can pull it up on your phone. You can pull it up on a website, and I mean, just call me later on today when you have free time. I'll walk you through it.
Well, I've never done one. And so, hey, this might be something we can make a segment out of or something maybe later. But before the draft, I want to get into free agency a little bit before I dabble my toes in this. I want to do a mock draft. I've never done one before, so we'll give it a shot sometime.
I was gonna say, I know just a guy to kind of guide you with that.
Yeah, so the mock drafts, they help you with a few things. Number one, with PFF, the way that PFF is designed is they're running off their big board. So Sam Monson or whoever developed the big board this year, it's geared towards what they believe is going to happen. Okay, you can change that setting to be more public or more PFF. I kind of go right in the middle. I don't trust PFF; they're always wrong. They get a lot wrong with their mock drafts, just like everybody else does.
Everybody.
So that's why I kind of go right in the middle, but I'm still trying to use my research to help me, guide myself on, but it'll help you understand where players are falling, what players are available.
Yeah. I would just think it'd be fun to see if I can just put out one mock draft and see if I can get one right.
Yeah. You probably won't do one. You'll probably end up doing 100 between today and tomorrow. Once you start, you won't stop. Yeah, so they're like Pringles.
Yeah, but a real GM only gets one shot. They don't get to do it 50 times.
Oh, they've done it 1,000 times. Whiteboard is going to be turned into War Room, so I'm probably going to start on it this weekend. We're going to get everything up on the whiteboard. We can mesh heads together if you guys have time that you want to spend off after shows, and then during one of the shows, I want to show everybody the whiteboard and the War Room that I'm putting together. I'm gonna do vertical like Brad. So, all right. Anything else you guys want to talk about today before we get off?
I think we're pretty good.
I think we're solid, man.
Let me wrap this up and do a little bit of a bow here. There's a lot that's about to happen between today and next Monday. And then even then, we're going to start hearing a lot this weekend. I'll put it to you this way. I have some access now. I'm not going to say what it is, but I have some access now to some more inside information, and I can't wait to use it. So the fact that the floodgates just opened up for me, I'm so looking forward to all the information that we're going to be able to share this week. And it starts today that I actually get to learn on what it is that I even have access to. So I'm expecting to be able to give you guys better, more accurate information, even on the daily as things are breaking. I should be able to hear it first, like all the other people out there. So again, please subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to start being able to give you guys a little bit more of some background information and what's going on with the NFL. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what we've been working so hard for is this, and showing up every day clearly has helped, and someone has noticed. So I'm excited about the future of this channel. I'm excited about the future of what we're going to be able to do here for not only content, but also the Cancer Foundation. The Rockhound Cancer Foundation is going to be able to grow like wildfire, and appreciate all of your support. Subscribe to the channel, like the stream if you haven't already, share it with a friend, and then don't forget to visit the description. There's a lot of links in there. Merch, ways to support, ways to reach out, general information, and consume it, man. Every day. Detroit Lions, NFL news right here on the Rise and Grind Morning Show. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Go in pride. Go Detroit Lions.
Detroit Lions will